All right, folks. Hey, welcome back to the program this morning. We got a special treat with us once again. He is Distinguished Professor of Education Policy and 21st Century Endowed Chair in the School Choice in the Department of Education Reform at the University of Arkansas College of Education and Health Professionals. He's Dr. Patrick Wolf, and he's on the line. Dr. Wolf, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Paul. Great to be here.
Absolutely. So I wanted to get a couple. I've got this story here I want to talk about here in just a moment. It has to do with Elizabeth Warren and her flip-flopping on some stuff in terms of school choice. But first off, can you just address briefly? Have you been following the news with what's going on with the Little Rock School District? I've been talking to some folks that say, what an example of why we need more school choice. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the traditional public school system, it's designed to have this hierarchical kind of command and control approach to delivering education. It's not as dynamic or organic as, our old vision of community schools or of the new vision of school choice that a lot of folks are discussing. And so, when you have a problem like you have some district-run public schools that aren't delivering results for parents, one approach that they go to is state control and state direction. I think it's just a big sort of wake-up call that we've got problems in a lot of these districts, especially inner city districts, and we have to be thinking more creatively about possible solutions.
I completely agree. Thinking creatively, thinking outside the box. So here it is. It's from the American Conservative. This other article I was just mentioning. Elizabeth Warren flipped, then flopped on school choice. Did you read this piece?
I did.
What are your thoughts on this? And which way was she? What position was she originally before she flipped and then flopped?
So it's interesting, Paul, because I've studied the politics of school choice, and the political coalition that tends to support school choice consists of three different groups. It includes conservatives who really value parents being involved in their child's education, directing their child's education. So that's like parental rights, parental direction of education. It includes libertarians who really believe that free markets are more effective mechanisms for delivering services to people than bureaucracies, than government bureaucracies. And then it includes a third group, and that is progressives who recognize that under the traditional system of residential assignment to schools, disadvantaged populations really suffer. They tend to have the least amount of access to quality schools. And so it's not surprising to me, it's never been surprising that progressives like Elizabeth Warren have been supporters of school choice, at least until they become serious political candidates in the Democratic Party. Then suddenly they have to change their position. But yes, she was a vocal supporter of school choice, of private school vouchers, of public school choice in the form of charter schools and open enrollment in her professorial career, in her intellectual career, when she was speaking as a professor on these issues. But then when she became a serious national politician, her position changed.
Gosh, I mean, we've seen that a bunch on a lot of a lot of times politicians flip flop. But on this particular instance, I mean, in this one article, when pressed to explain such a blatant change of heart, Warren claimed she was never in favor of private school vouchers, tax credits for alternative schooling, or any other controversial reform. That's just not true, though, is it?
No, I mean it's right in her book. She said universal vouchers would be a great way to shake up the system, the education system. So I mean it's as plain as the nose on your face that she was advocating support for private school choice as a progressive reform.
Wow, and that's what's interesting to me. And we've talked about this. I think the last month you were on, we talked about this, how this does really have a very bipartisan nature to it. The idea of school choice. because there are basic ideas. Because I feel like it's more student focused. We're actually trying to help the student as the opposite of that is just kind of trying to maintain the status quo. And I think everybody can agree we can do better when it comes to our educational system. And yet, I don't know, this mentions Betsy DeVos, this mentions, Donald Trump, of course, anything that a Republican does at this point, the Democrats are going to be against, and really vice versa. But, I mean, I'm just trying to think, look, I think locally, and we talked about this last month, Dr. Wolf, locally, I think if we can get people behind the ideas that are going to work or that are going to be new ideas, that's where we should focus and try to maybe even get away from the labels. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we are all responsible for the education of the next generation of children. Parents are primarily responsible. They see the kids every day. They are keenly attuned to what their children need educationally and the circumstances in which they'll thrive. And they also bear the most consequences, if an education goes poorly for a child. So obviously parents have to be significantly involved, but all of society needs to contribute resources to it because all of society benefits from effectively educated children. At the same time, we just get this warning blast from the National Assessment of Education Progress. One of my colleagues, Marty West of Harvard University, said they should rename it, the National Assessment of Stagnation and Decline, because the scores are trending down. They're not going up the way they should be. So we've definitely got a lot of work to do. I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that school choice should be a big part of it, and sadly, it used to be a heavily bipartisan issue. Until we entered this recent era of partisanship.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I mean, I remember it. I remember, it being something that united both sides, and this was something that we could do. And then, like anything, if you start to change something, the people that don't want it to be changed, they really fight tooth and nail. I want to once again, thank you, Dr. Wolf, for coming on the program, and I want to restate the reason I love having you on is because you are working, as a distinguished professor in education policy at the University of Arkansas, and I think you are such a valuable resource for, advocating for school choice, and I don't think enough people know that this is right here. You're right here in our state doing this great work. Can you tell us a little bit about, before you go, this the work that you do here in Arkansas, and I know you also do a lot of work outside of the state advocating for school choice.
Sure, Paul. So I've done a variety of evaluations of private school choice programs in places as varied as Washington, D.C., the state of Louisiana, and Delhi, India. So wow. I've basically traveled the country and traveled the globe to learn about what happens when folks, have more access to private schooling as an option with resource supports from government or private sources. So I've sort of been all around studying that. I also study public charter schools. I examine funding equity and inequity in the funding of public education. So does a child receive less money when they choose a public charter school versus a district-run school? So I've studied that issue too. And basically, my charge is to speak truth to power about these important education policies and education reforms. And I base my recommendations and my opinions on the evidence that I've uncovered and other rigorous scholars have uncovered about these questions.
Dr. Patrick Wolf, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. Look forward to doing it again soon, sir.
You're certainly welcome, Paul.
All righty, folks, going to take a break. Back in just a moment.